Hello, BookTube. I've got some more random-ass Hedgehog book recommendations for you here on a beautiful Saturday, because there's never a bad reason to talk about books with you and hurl some titles at your face. I've got a variety here, as usual. Some of these are not as full-throated a recommendation as others. A number of you have responded to me saying that by saying, well, how about you make one of these where everything is a 10 out of 10? I could certainly do that. But these are all worthy books and all worth at least a bit of your time. Maybe some of them will be 10s for you when they weren't for me. This first one is from the Library of America. It's a box set. It's great. It's granular. You're going to have to be interested in the subject, but if you are, there's nothing like it. And that is their 2-volume set on the American Revolution, which is not a history of the American Revolution. Instead, it's them going through archival records from all over the country to find the pamphlets, the little circulars, the broadsides that flew in every direction in the years leading up to the American Revolution. It's amazing how much of that stuff has survived. A huge percentage of it has not, but it's amazing how much has survived, so that you can make a big 2-volume box set recounting those pamphlet wars of trying to get ordinary people to either accept the idea of rebelling against the crown or getting them to reject the people who are putting that idea forward. Like I said, you need to be interested in the American Revolution. This is not the place to start. If you're looking to learn about the American Revolution, you really have to be interested in what was going on. But once you are interested in the subject, it's important for you to know about this. I would say read these volumes anyway. It's important for you to know how much of this discussion was happening below the radar of big, typical 1-volume histories of the Revolution, which don't even talk about the intense pamphleteering activity that affected everybody. Everybody who learned, on the Horn book, everybody who learned their letters could read by the time they were a milkmaid or a Hooper's apprentice or whatnot. And these were the things they could read. These were free or almost cost nothing, as opposed to books in bookshops. There's a thriving world here to think about. I think it's fascinating. One of the best concoctions that Library of America ever did. Then we have something from Penguin. This is by Mark Ovenden and Maxwell Roberts. And it's Airline Maps, believe it or not. It's a big trade paperback of Airline Maps. And you wouldn't think that this could be made interesting, but boy, oh boy, do these two make it interesting. First of all, this is a visual delight, because you're seeing not only all the different routes, some of which are no longer followed, others of which have become very popular, but also advertising brochures, ad company campaign artwork about interiors of cabins and exteriors of planes. Just amazing. It's amazing to look at this view, this very illustrated, page-turning view of how people flew and where they went and how inconvenient it was. Just amazing. An amazingly inspired idea for a book. So if you are interested in, for instance, transportation, if you're a big plane person or a big train person, you got to read it. It fascinated me, and I'm not one of those people. Then we have something by Jordan Goodman. This is a biography. This is Paul Robeson, A Watched Man. And it is about the once world-famous singer and actor, Paul Robeson, who decided very early on in his life that any fame or money that he accrued in his professional career would go towards social advocacy, that he would use any stature he had to change the world, to make it a better and more just, more equitable place. So that is, of course, the concentration of this book. There are Robeson books that concentrate on his art, and his art is in this book, but that is the concentration of this book, is his social activism. And it's amazing. It's an amazing portrait. There is no shortage of Robeson biographies, but this is an amazing portrait of an incredibly brave man who saw a better world and who is not largely remembered for that. When the general public thinks about this kind of social advocacy, they think of Martin Luther King. They don't think of Paul Robeson, when arguably he had a greater effect. Certainly motivated larger crowds. You were going to see a star. I loved this book. I've read a few Robeson biographies, but this is the one that I think gets at the heart of the man. I think this is the one that he would probably have liked the most. Then we have Jerry Spinelli. This is a YA book. It is a weird, unclassifiable YA book. It is Maniac McGee, an absolute classic about a boy who runs. He can't stop running, and he becomes a legend. He becomes Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, Paul Bunyan. He becomes larger than life. What are the things that Maniac McGee has done? And with everybody talking about his legend, well, maybe they'll start to talk about other things too. Maybe the legend will be good for everybody. And what about the boy at the heart of it all? Just almost impossible to classify, but oh, how I love this book. How I love it. I don't currently have a paperback copy of this thing, but it's engraved on my heart. There are a handful of YA books that are not only successful for YA readers, but successful for adult readers and also bigger than themselves. Those of you who know, for instance, For Love of Winn-Dixie, that's the type of book I'm talking about, and this is that type of book. If you have somehow missed it, don't miss it. Then we have a picture book. It's arresting. It should stick with you forever. Once you've seen it, once you've paged your way through it, you should page your way through it slowly and really think about it. It's by Isa Leshko, and it's called Allowed to Grow Old. And it's a picture book about meat industry animals. We call them farmyard animals, but they're not in farms. They're locked by the neck into gates 1,000 at a time in a factory. They can't move. They sleep in that position. They can't move. They give birth in that position. And then the only time they're ever freed from that position is to be trucked to slaughter. Usually when they're a year old or less. And this book is photo after photo after photo of those kinds of animals who were rescued from that hell and allowed to grow old. And it is shocking. When is the last time you saw an old pig? An old cow? Do you even know what such a thing would look like? Much less how they would act and what they would do and think. And this book just shows you that. And there is text, but I swear the pictures are the thing here. They are a hammer blow, just a hammer blow. It's an amazing, amazing book. Then we have a great big biography, 1,000 pages long. This is Ben Bradley's biography of Ted Williams, who was called the Kid in his heyday in professional baseball. This is just the type of thing that you want for a 1,000-page biography, especially written by a fan. I kept expecting, the first time I read this, I kept expecting Bradley to just lapse into hero worship, because he did worship Williams. He did worship Ted Williams when he was a kid. So did everybody in Boston and everywhere else. He was worshipped. I figured, those little fans grow up, and maybe they get into a position where they're going to write a 1,000-page biography. There's going to be something of that clinging. But no, this is warts and all. Definitely. It is fantastic. A fantastic work of biography. And it passes what I consider to be, I think it passes what I consider to be one of the strongest yardsticks of its quality in a book like this, in that you do not need to be interested in baseball to keep reading this book. You especially don't need to have all the stats memorized, which some baseball books require. This does not. It's truly stupendous. Okay, then I mentioned for Allowed to Grow Old that there are parts of it that will stick with you, that should stick with you forever. That is true here too. The author here, this is a novel. The author is Elliot Pearlman, who wrote 7 Types of Ambiguity. And this is his novel, The Street Sweeper, which is his masterpiece. This is a big, extremely complex, extremely empathetic novel about a couple of main characters. The secondary characters in here are realized almost to perfection. It's amazing. But the 2 main characters are a black man who's got a job as a janitor. He is trying to wait out his parole. He has been released from prison. He's done a term in prison. He's trying to wait out his parole and basically become a citizen again without this thing hanging all over him. And the other person is an old cancer patient who is a survivor of Auschwitz. And they get to know each other, and Pearlman, I won't say relaxes into his subject, but he expands the book. This is not just a quick, chipped personality study of these two oddballs meeting each other. There's another person involved as well. There's a teacher involved as well who is starting to think he's never going to get tenure. He's starting to think that he doesn't deserve it. And he is put onto a project, a historical project that may renovate his career and that will bring together all three of those characters in a storyline revolving around recordings of people who have just recently been liberated from Auschwitz. And there are moments in this book, many of them, one in particular, I don't know if any of you have ever read this book, there's one moment in particular here that will send a shiver right through you. But there are all sorts of moments like that in here. And the characters are so well done. This is the exact opposite of what I complain about in contemporary so-called literary fiction, where everybody's a character sketch, where you're supposed to know the author's Twitter feed before you read the book and maybe in place of reading the book. This is the exact opposite of that. Tremendously textured, built world full of real people. Then we have a slightly oversized book. This is by Tim Halliday, and this is The Book of Frogs. This was sublime. This is a book of some of the world's frogs, only in this book, because it's a little oversized, the frogs are represented at life size on the page, and you get descriptions of them, a little bit about their distribution, their natural history, and also their ecological, how they're faring conservation-wise. And it ends up being, I mean, this publisher did a whole bunch of series like this, The Book of whatever, and The Book of Frogs is by far the most successful one. It is so weird. It's such a weird safari into the world of frogs. And you're seeing how big they are on the page, which is really neat. There are some frogs that are too big to fit in the book without being scaled, but most of them can. Most of them can. Their size can be represented on the page. It's just wonderful. If you are, to put it mildly, if you are interested in frogs, you must get this book. Then we have Barry Lopez, who was extremely skilled at very graceful, very eloquent, natural essays about the natural world. This is his book, Crossing Open Ground. I could have picked really anything that he wrote, but it's a lot more accessible than some of his longer works, and it's lovely. Just beautiful. Even in terms just of the word craft, not necessarily the subject matter. If you are not a tree hugger, if you're not fond of nature writing, you're still going to fall under the spell of these essays, I think. I think you will, because of how wonderful Barry Lopez writes. Then we have another 2-volume box set. This is Alan Ryan. This is a book on politics, where he takes a big historical survey of politics from the earliest parts of the written record where we know it is practiced to 2.5 centuries later. And that could be very boring. It could be very academic. It could be very info-dumping, except that Alan Ryan is wonderful reading. This box set is worth having. It is worth having and reconsulting. It's one of those things where I would advise that you read the whole thing from start to finish first, and then in later years, when some political tradition or tradition maker comes up, go to your On Politics and find the key figures in the index and just read that bit. Use it, in other words, forever after. But you're going to want to read it as a narrative of a saga of human politics. It is endlessly interesting. Then we have Stephen Dando Collins. I've had my problems with this author before, but this book is a wholehearted recommendation. This is The Legions of Rome. Again, a slightly oversized hardcover where he takes you through all of Rome's legions, which had numbers of their own, they had identities of their own, nicknames of their own, traditions of their own, and each had a long history of triumphs and tragedies, of treachery and destruction. And they cared about it. The legions cared about their histories in that way. So you actually can study them as a collection of viable, independent entities. The 10th Legion, for instance. The legions had identities of their own, and Dando Collins is very good about that in this book, which is also heavily illustrated. That's why it's a little bigger than a normal hardcover. Again, if you are a fan of ancient Rome, this is well worth your time to add to your library. It is the modern definitive note. And then we have something by Jen Bettton. We can finish with this. This is a children's picture book called Hedgehog Needs a Hug. And it's about a little hedgehog who just wants a hug. He can't help it that he's repulsive to everyone else. He can't help it that he's spiky and itchy and gross and that no one wants to hug him. He can't help that. His heart is in the right place. And it's wonderfully, wistfully illustrated. The illustrations have these huge white borders all throughout the book to add to the old-timey children's picture book feel of the thing. And it also has an excellent message. I like children's books that have no message at all, but I also like children's books when they have a good message that isn't browbeating. Children are pretty smart. They don't like being browbeaten any more than anybody else does, and the message here is pretty good. It's pretty good, and it's pretty well handled, which is that you'll find people who will accept you for who you are. And there are maybe steps that you can take to be a little bit less prickly. So it's the wonderful thing. Hedgehog Needs a Hug is a wonderful way to end these Hedgehog recommendations for today. We will continue, I suppose. You can't get enough of me talking about books. I can't get enough of talking to you about books. So we'll wrap this up for now, but we'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.